What's up, guys? I've been wanting to teach y'all the basics of poker. This video is good for those of you that are just learning and interested in the game. Also, I started this channel to show my friends and family what I do, and they're not all familiar with the game. So I hope this video will help you guys understand what is going on when I show you my sessions. Because I go through so many sessions, and eventually I want to show as many as I can. I'm going to show y'all the basic rules and play of the game to where you could watch my game or any game and understand what's going on. I'll teach enough to where you could technically go in a card house and play for fun. But in this video, I'm not going to go over how to play poker like when it comes to strategy. I want to make videos later that go over strategy and playstyle, so keep an eye out for that. So to start, this game I'm teaching is specifically No Limit Texas Hold'em. There is another common poker game called Pot Limit Omaha. I only play that version in bomb pots, which you can see in vlog 2. With No Limit Hold'em, there are cash games and tournaments. In tournaments, you pay to get in, and there's a specific start and end to the game. And the prize pool pays out at the end as people get knocked out. For cash games, you can start and end whenever. So I can sit at a table and buy in 100, 500, or whatever the max buy-in is. If I lose, let's say 500, I can buy in again 100, 500, however much, and as many times as I want. I specialize in cash games right now, so just know whatever I show for the time being is me playing or talking about cash games. In No Limit Hold'em, each player is dealt 2 cards, and you are dealt up to 5 community cards, which is also known as the board. And you want to make the best 5-card hand. You usually use both of your cards. These are called whole cards, but sometimes you'll use just one, or sometimes you don't use any and you just play the board. These hands have rankings. The higher you go in the rankings, the less likely it is to get that hand. So like a royal flush is very rare. I don't recall ever hitting a royal flush, and I played so many hands, more than I could even estimate. But yeah, when you start out, you have to remember the order and the strength of these hands. But eventually you remember it to where you don't even think about it. We'll go through a couple of examples, because I remember when I started, I would look at this chart and I still didn't fully understand it. And in these examples, we're going to assume that all 5 community cards are dealt, because sometimes they're not. So here's an example of 3 players, and they're all playing a high card. So let's say if you have ace king on this board, you're going to be playing both of your cards, but you have ace high. The 5 cards you're playing is ace, king, queen, jack, 8. And then let's say player 1 has king deuce. They're going to be just playing the king, and they have king high. So they have king, queen, jack, 8, 7. And then, like I said, you could technically play the board. Player 2 is playing the board with queen high. So they're playing all 5 cards on the board. They're not even playing their deuce 4. And then here's 3 examples of having a pair. So if you have pocket kings, you already have a pair in your hand. And if you have a pair over the board, they'll call this an overpair. And then like player 1, they have ace queen, and the queen hits the board, and they have a pair of queens. They have top pair. They're playing queen, queen, 6, 4, 3. And then player 2 has a pair of 4s. So they're playing 4, 4, ace, queen, 6. And this term, you'll hear middle pairs. So with pairs, you'll hear over pairs, middle pairs, or bottom pairs. And that's just in relation to which pair it is on the board. And then you have 2 pair. So player 1 here, if they have queen, jack, and they hit queen, jack, 6 on the flop, for example, they flop 2 pair. And then if the board runs out, they still have queen, queen, jack, jack, 6. And then let's say if you have pocket kings here on this board run out, you also have 2 pair. So you're playing king, king, 4, 4, queen. So in this example, the 2 pair you have is stronger than the other 2 pair because it's determined by the best pair. So the pocket kings here, it could be pocket kings with deuces. That still beats queens and jacks. And then same thing with the other examples. Like let's say the king and the 6 here were switched, then it would still be 2 pair versus 2 pair. And then 3 of a kind, it's not very often people will say 3 of a kind. They either say a set or trips. And sometimes they'll use set and trips interchangeably, but technically a set is when you have the pocket pair and then you hit the card on the board. So like here you have a set of kings. And then trips is when you have like 2 different cards in your hand and 2 of one of your cards comes out. You have trips because you still have 3 of a kind, but 2 are on the board. So in these examples, you have straights. So let's say you have jack 10 on this board. You're playing king, queen, jack, 10, 9. And let's say player 1 has ace jack on this board. They're playing ace, queen, king, jack, 10. This straight specifically that player 1 has, ace, king, queen, jack, 10, is called Broadway, in case you hear that term. And then here's an example I had in vlog 2, where on the board you have a straight, and then the other player and I have a straight to the jack. So of course we're playing 7, 8, 9, 10, jack. And someone recently asked me, yeah, I both have a straight to the jack, but does his ace play? And the answer is no, it doesn't play because you're playing 5 cards, which make up the straight. And like the other examples, these are hands that I actually have recently had in the last couple of weeks. So on this board, both players have a flush, but player 1, the king high flush is better. And then again, you could just play 1 card. You could have a 1 card flush. So in this hand, player 1 beats you because they're playing the 4 diamonds on the board and then the king of diamonds. So they're playing ace, king, 10, 7, 6, which beats ace, queen, 10, 8, 7. You see? So I think y'all got the gist of it. The last example I'll give is a full house and a straight flush. This is a hand I recently had where I was one card away from a bad beat promo at the lodge. And in this hand, my opponent hit a straight flush, so 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all hearts. And I had a full house, Jack, 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 5, 5. I would have hit the promo if I would have hit quads. So if either of these fives were a jack, it would have been quads beat by a straight flush. And that's another thing is, like 3 of a kind, we don't often say 4 of a kind, it's usually quads. And then the lingo for full house is, sometimes you'll hear somebody say it like jack's full, or let's say I had jack 5 here instead, it's 5s full of jacks. And then if you have full house over full house, it's the 3 of a kind part that takes priority. So let's say you have a full house, 5s over jacks, and then you have another full house, jacks over 9s, let's say. Then the jacks over 9s beats the 5s full of jacks. So with that, how does the game work as far as betting and cards being dealt and stuff like that? Let's talk about position. So a table typically has 5 to 9 players sitting on it, and there's a dealer, of course. In each hand, someone is the button. This determines everyone's position and when it's their turn to act. The button will be this little circular object that says dealer on it. Don't get confused by the word dealer. They're not dealing the cards. I'm not sure why it says this. I think it's because like at house games when there's no dealers, they are supposed to deal. But either way, don't get confused. This little object is just a position marker. The main 3 positions to know is the button, the small blind, and the big blind. To the left of the dealer, you have your small blind, and to the left of the small blind, you have your big blind. And then these other positions have names, but for simplicity, right now, just think of them as middle position. For months, I didn't know their specific names, but I still played well. Eventually, if you play a while, you remember their specific names, but it's not super necessary. Just in general positioning, think early position, middle position, late position. So typically in each round, the small blind acts first and the button acts last. There are 4 betting rounds. During these rounds, you act. You can check, bet, fold, or call. So when you check, you're passing the action to the next player. You can't check a raise. When you bet or raise, you're putting money into the pot. And they're the same things. A raise is just when you face an initial bet and you raise it more. Usually you have to raise it double, but like let's say somebody raises 10 and another person raises 20, then you could raise it to 30. So it's not always double, but it's just a good general idea to know that you got to raise about double. A call is when you match your raise. So if somebody bets $20, you can call the $20, put $20 in. A fold is when you give up your cards. You can technically do it when somebody checks it to you, which this is called an open fold, but you should really only do it when you're faced a bet. And then another term for fold you'll hear a lot is a muck. So then as far as the betting rounds, pre-flop, that's when everybody's dealt the 2 cards and then the betting starts. Now in the pre-flop round, the blinds make the initial bet. So this is a bet put out before the cards even come out. And then that bet is determined by the blind structure of the game. So let's say we're playing 1-2 no limit hold'em. That means that the small blind each hand is going to put out $1 and the big blind each hand is going to put out $2. Then it goes to the next player and you act around. The action closes after everyone has gotten a chance to act. If you fold, you can't act anymore throughout the hand. If there's a raise and you're still in the hand, you of course get a chance to act on that. So let's say you call and then somebody raises you 20, then it's going to go around again and you're going to get a chance to act. So that's pre-flop. And then the flop is when the first 3 cards are dealt and then the action starts at the small blind. And then the turn, 1 card is dealt and the action starts at the small blind again. And then the river, the last card is dealt and the action starts again at the small blind. So throughout any of these rounds, when everyone has folded but 1 player, that stops the rounds in the action. Or it can go to the end, and any number of players can go to what is called showdown. Showdown is when the action closes to the river and it's time to show your hand. And then, of course, whoever has a winning hand, or if you're the last player remaining, you're rewarded the pot. I've gotten a question before, like, if you and another player are all in and everybody's folded, is there still action after that? So no. Throughout any of these rounds, if the remaining players go all in, there's no more action. The rest of the cards are just dealt to determine the winner. And that's the basics of poker. I want to go through a couple of other things that are good to understand for the game. So you'll hear this term range, and if you study the game, you'll see these charts a lot, and they're color coded differently depending on what the source is trying to teach you. So you got your suited hands and your offsuit hands, and that just means if your 2 cards are holding the same suit, you're suited. If not, they're offsuit. And then you have your pocket pairs that run across this green diagonal line. And then sometimes you'll hear the term broadways when it comes to whole cards. And that just means you're holding a 10 and another card that's above a 10. So like 10 jack, 10 king, king queen, ace king. These fall in a range called Broadway cards. And then you also hear connectors. Connectors are cards that are consecutively next to each other or close, where it just takes 3 community cards to make a straight. So of course, like your 6-7, your 8-7, even like a 10-8 is technically a connector. Ace king is technically a connector because you can make a straight out of these cards. You may hear the term one gapper. That just means there's 1 card that separates your whole card. So like a 10-8 I mentioned, or Jack 9, Deuce 4, And yeah, like I said, I'm not going to go into strategy, but some of these cards are better to play than others. And then I remember when I was learning the game, I was like, what is low stakes versus high stakes? So the blind structure and the stack sizes determines the stake of the game. The common blind structure for low stakes games is 1-2 or 1-3. And for higher stakes, you have like 5-5, you have 5-10, you have 25-50. Like you see in the picture here, this is a 5-10 game and they're playing with a few $1,000s. And this game eventually runs up to when they're playing 10 to 20K. The 25-50 game is usually where you have like 100K plus stacks. In lower stakes, you can still sit with a good stack. I've seen people play 1,500, 2K. I see 3,000 sometimes. I think the biggest stack I've seen is somebody playing 5,000 in a 1-2 game. So sometimes these low stakes games get big as well. But it's a little bit more common in Texas. People will come into Texas and play at the card houses I play at, and they'll be from like the Midwest or the Northeast, and they'll laugh at how big we play even in a 1-2 game. But most stacks will be under $1,000. When you play, you just have to look at the stacks and how aggressive the players are playing. You're not forced to play at a table. If you go to a card house where there's multiple tables running, you can request a table change if you're not comfortable with how the table is playing. So if they're playing a little too big, there's like a lot of big stacks around you, you can ask for a table change. Or if you're playing with a lot of short stacks, I played at a table and people only had like $100 in front of them playing very tight. So yeah, you can ask for a table change if you're not comfortable with the game, you want to try out another table, whatever makes you comfortable. The very last thing I'll mention is PLO. You'll see me play these bomb pots. PLO is similar to No Limit Hold'em, except you're dealt 4 or more cards. And you have to play 2 cards out of your hand and 3 on the board. So like the bomb pots I play, they're double boards. So for example, in this hand, if you go back to vlog 2, on the top board, I'm playing a 7-8 flush. But any higher flush beats me. There's a possible full house on this board. Quad 5s can beat me. And on the other board, the best possible hand I could have is ace-7. So I'm playing ace-ace, 7-7, queen. And then in this other hand, the hero's hand has a straight on the bottom, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But the villain hand on the bottom has kings full of 4s. And then on the top, the villain has a set of kings. And the hero is only playing queen 5. So king, queen, 5, 5, 10. So yeah, let's say in PLO, you have the ace of hearts, but no other hearts to go with it. If there's 4 hearts on a board, you don't have a flush because you have to play 2 cards. But now let's say there's a 3 of a kind on the board. You only need that 1 card to have quads because you're still playing 2 cards. So let's say there's 3 5s on the board. Even if your highest card in your hand is a 6 and you have the other 5 to go with it, you're still playing quads. You're still playing 6, 5 and then the other 3 5s on the board. I've covered most of the basics to where you could start practicing or playing. It just takes time and experience like anything. I want this channel to be mostly vlogs of my sessions, but I do plan on making a few more videos about the game. Things related to strategy or how card houses work or even things like etiquette. Next week I will be hosting a session, so stay tuned for that. But as far as this video, let me know any questions or feedback in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time.